Hello again. Alright, we're going to continue on now, still with research, but now we're going to look at these options here, the criteria search and the data filtering record. They actually do very similar things, but in different ways. Let's just talk about these three things combined because they are important. We've had a good look at the tabulate and graph screen. And what you can do there, as you saw, is you can take a whole set of data records, whether it's 10 or 10,000, and you can ask questions of it and look at those results. Look at how many suns are in whatever, or what the harmonic components are, and so on. And you can even do a simple filtering of the tabulations, the tables. Remember I showed you how you could select adjacent cells and filter those. But that was very basic filtering, very, very simple. These next two options here are about taking your same sets of data, or different sets of data, but basically the same groups, asking a particular question of the data so you can actually extract those records and put them to one side, and then take them back into the tabulate and graph if you want to, and do further work on them. So these two parts of Jigsaw, the criteria search and the filter data records, are about extracting subgroups from your data and that fit particular requirements and then taking them back into the tabulate and graph to do further research. The filter data records extract subgroups from your data based on their name, their place of birth, and any other criteria you've put in. The criteria search part of this will extract subgroups from your data based on some form of astrological configuration. Neptune square Saturn, everybody with Neptune square Saturn, extract that from my data, and then let's go and make that into a subgroup, and then let's work with that in the tabulate and graph screen. So the criteria search is for asking astrological questions. The filter data records is about asking English questions, questions about the words or the information which is there about the birth records. Let's start with the filter data records, and to do this we're going to look at the file of the US presidents. Let's go up here to File, go to Open, and scroll down, and here's a data file on the US presidents. So let's just open that up. Okay, so now we've got that there. If we have a look at this data, go to Edit Data, we see the US presidents. And also what I want you to note is what we looked at under the data tutorials is each one of these presidents I've actually put criteria in, individual criteria. So when they became president, their age, their number of terms, and whether they completed those terms. Remember from the data tutorial we can add criteria here, etc. Any criteria we want. We could add, for example, whether the president was a Republican or a Democrat, or whatever was the political party back then in the 18th century, and so on down the list. Okay, so this is the group that we've got, and in this set there are 42 US presidents. We're up to the 43rd with George Bush, of course, George W. Bush, who's just not on this particular version of the data that I've got. Alright, so we've got that loaded up, and let us say that you've got this collection of presidents and you want to sort them in some way, like you just want to work with the presidents who did 2 terms, or who were older than 60 when they became president, or younger than 50 when they became president, or something along those lines. This is where you do it, under the research screen here, Filter Data Records. So click on this now, and let's look at this. The first thing I want you to notice is the field. These are the fields which are here in the data records that you've got. Remember, you had the description, you had the date, you had the day range which you're not using. The detailed level is, in other words, whether there's no time, whether it is time data, etc. And then with the data you've got the time zone the person was born in, the time, the abbreviation and the actual time zone, the time they're born, the name of the place they're born in, the latitude they're born at, the longitude they're born at. And then here Jigsaw has picked up on this data set the criteria that you have entered, or we have entered, so that we can also search this group based on these criteria. If your criteria is a set drop-down list, it will reproduce this list here for you. Now, armed with this, and this is very simplistic, but armed with this we can sort the data. For example, We could do something really silly. We could say we want to look at every president that's born after 6 p.m. at night in their local birth time. So we'd say the time, and we'd say greater than 6 p.m. And then we'd simply click the add button. And there we have time greater than 6 p.m. Now, if I say OK to that, what will happen is it will select out every president whose birth time is greater than 6 p.m. This may be useful for you, right? May not. All right, let's add to this search. Let's now look at presidents who were born at a time greater than 6 p.m. at a certain age. Let's say they had to be less than 60 years old. And we'll add that. Now, as soon as we add a second thing to the list of criteria, we're building our question here. Criteria simply means question. As soon as we do that, we bring in what we call Boolean operators. And the default is AND. So this is simply time. They're born at a time greater than 6 p.m. So they're born after 6 p.m. at night. And they were less than 60 years old. So if they are 60, they would not be picked up. If they were 59, then this would sort them out. If I wanted to be 60 less than or equal to, I would have selected this one, less than or equal to. So these two conditions have to be found before Jigsaw will create the subgroup. Let's just click OK and see what happens. Okay, it's gone through the subgroup and it's found 6 presidents that fulfill this condition. Now, having found our little subgroup that fulfills this condition, we can do several things. We can simply look at it. We can filter our records so that it turns all the presidents off in the data set that don't have that condition and just leaves on the ones that do fulfill it. Or we can create a whole new project with it. So if we create a whole new project, then of course we have to name it, and we would name it something like presidents who are under 60 or something along those lines. If we filter these, then you can see only those records which pass the search criteria are now enabled. Let's look at what Jigsaw has done to the data set. If we now open and have a look at our list of presidents, look, they're all switched off except a few. The few that are left switch on are actually the ones that fulfill our set. Then, of course, we could take that and now we could run in here and do research work on those 6 presidents' charts. So if we did something really simple, you'll see that just be working with 6 presidents there. So, and most of these presidents had their suns in Capricorn, Aquarius or Pisces. None of them had it here. So you can think about or ponder the potential of the meaning of that. All right, let's go back and let's quit out of the tabulated graph screen. Let's go back to our data set and turn them all on. Okay, let's go back to our filter data records, and it will maintain our question here, provided we haven't closed Jigsaw. Okay, we could change this very simple search. We could highlight this and say or instead of and. And of course what that will do is it will find every president that's born at a time greater than 6 p.m. at night, or any president who got elected to the presidency when they were younger than 60 years old. If we click OK, we've now got 32 of our 42 presidents. So it's a much larger search. Let's go back. We can turn that back to and. We can start doing other things using other levels of these Boolean operators. We've looked at and we've looked at or. We could actually now do a not. So the time they're born later than 6 p.m. at night and they are not less than 60. That, of course, is the same as saying they are greater than 60. That would be the same, but they are not this. And if we say this, then there's actually no presidents who fulfill that condition. All right, back to this section. We can turn off an operator by simply clicking on it, and we've turned off the not there, as you can see. So we can change this to and, we can change it to or, simply by clicking these buttons. Highlight it and click the buttons. But we could make it a little bit more complicated than that. Let's say we also want our presidents born below a certain latitude band. So we'll say less than, and let us say 37 degrees north. So now we're going to be looking at presidents who were born at a latitude below 37 degrees north. Now, we may want this as an or we may want this as an and. Let's just look at this. If we ran this, it would show us any president who was born after 6 p.m. at night, or any president who was younger than 60 when they were elected to the presidency, or any president who was born below the latitude band of 37 degrees north. Obviously, if we change these to and, then we're actually asking for any president who's born after 6 p.m. at night and is less than 60 and was born below 37 degrees north. So we dramatically change that. We can bracket things as well. For example, if I select these two lines just by using my shift key and hit the bracket key, then what we're looking for is Jigsaw will perform this search before it performs that search. So it's going to look for any president younger than 60 or any president born below 37 degrees north, and once that's established that list, then of that list, any president who's born after 6 p.m. at night. Okay. We have a exclusive OR as well. If we select this and change this to an exclusive OR, the difference between exclusive OR and OR, let's just play with this a little bit, make this OR. If we say OR and OR, if we do OR this and OR that, then it's one or the other, or even both of them. It's either one will fulfill the condition. If we do an XNOR or an exclusive OR, then it can be that or it can be that, but it cannot be both of them. That's what that is talking about. Okay, these enable you to build very, very complicated searches, which you'll see when we start looking at doing astrological searches. It takes a while to get used to these. The and or are very logical, but these ones and the brackets can be more complicated. So what I suggest to you is that as you play around with them, start with very small data sets like the presidents and tinker with these Boolean operators and just until you get a feel for them. And then what I do if I'm building a complicated search, particularly in the other screen, I will build it and run it on a very small database to make sure I've actually got it running correctly. And once I've got it correctly, then I know that I'm right and I'll apply it to my larger database. Alright, let's cancel out of this and start looking at the criteria search screen. Remember, the filter data records, which we've just been looking at, searches for things to do with your data about name, date, place, criteria that you've put in. The criteria search screen does the same thing. Here's the Boolean operators again, but now asking astrological questions, and that's the key difference. Let's play with this, but let's play with this using another data set. If we close this out and we now open, let's open our data, and we've already constructed the 21st century ephemeris in the previous examples we were working with, the previous two. So let's use that now. Let's open it up. And there it is. We've loaded up the 21st century ephemeris with a chart for every day. Jigsaw doesn't know it's got an ephemeris. Jigsaw simply knows it's got 36,500 charts or records in its database that it's working with. Let's go to the criteria search screen. Now, I'm going to assume that you have worked your way through the tabulate and graph screen tutorial, because if you have, then a lot of this will be familiar to you because it is identical to that screen. We have the list of available points, we have the ability to add more points, which we looked at in that tutorial on tabulate and graph. Okay, we've got that. We've got the data type, and in the tabulate and graph screen these were listed down as little boxes that you checked, but here they are, all exactly the same. Data type. Once you select the data type like longitude, then you go for zodiac sign, sign axis, element, and so on. So you've got the same options sitting here. And once again, you've got charts for inexact times. You can actually select and work with charts with exact only, or use a median position, or exclude only ambiguous points. In other words, these things are exactly the same as what we had before, even new and old rulers. And here are the boxes for adding harmonics and changing orbs and shifting your starting point and so on. If you've just jumped into this tutorial and bypassed all the tabulator and graph screen, I would strongly recommend that you go back and look at that. Okay, so here's our selection. So we've got an ephemeris sitting here. Let's ask it some questions. Let's search this ephemeris for a particular planetary combination. Let's look for difficult times. Using the control key, we'll say a Saturn-Pluto combination. If I hold the control key down, then I can select 2 points. We want a Saturn-Pluto aspect. We go up to here. We don't want Saturn-Pluto in signs, we want aspects. So we go to angular separation. Then we can choose whether we have a set aspect, or a harmonic aspect, or we want them just in phase, just like in the tabulate and graph screen. Let's look for a harmonic aspect. The harmonic aspect, we've selected that, so now all of a sudden we actually down here have to select our harmonic. If we select the 4th harmonic, we're going to be looking at conjunctions, squares, oppositions, and the waning square here. And we've got an orb. Let us say that orb of 5 degrees is too wide. Let's change it to 2 degrees. Let's keep it tight. So we now click up here and you'll see we've changed it to 2 degrees. Now what we have to do is add this to this list here, this box. This is where we're building our criteria search. And I'm going to intentionally now make a mistake, because I make this mistake quite often. I want to show you not to panic when you do it. If you don't select anything here, if we're up here for example, and we just think, oh right, I've got that right, and we click add, we get this, no division names have been selected. Please select at least one division and then try again. Click OK and it takes you straight back to the screen, and it's telling you that you have not selected here. Okay, so we select those, and with something select there, one of them selected if you want, or all 4, then you click add. And what we get is we begin to build our question that we're going to run through the database. There's a Saturn-Pluto in any one of 4 selected divisions, here it is there, and it's a harmonic aspect. So we've got that set. But we not only want a Saturn-Pluto hard aspect with a 2 degree orb, let's say we want to get Mars involved as well. So if we put Mars, select Mars now, and using the control key, we want to see if Mars is aspecting Saturn or Pluto as well. So we say Mars to Pluto, and we can keep all of this, and we want a Mars-Pluto aspect. So now we click add. So we want a Saturn-Pluto aspect, and we want a Mars-Pluto aspect. Or the other thing that we want, or would satisfy us, is a Mars-Saturn aspect. There it is there, Mars-Saturn. Click the add button. Now let's look at what we've got here. We're asking Jigsaw to go through the entire 100 years of the 21st century and find every Saturn-Pluto hard harmonic aspect, 4th harmonic aspect, but at the same time Mars has to be aspecting Pluto in the same way, and Mars has to be aspecting Saturn in the same way. Now we can change this around, because what we really want is simply the Saturn-Pluto aspect and Mars aspecting one of those planets. So by the 2 degree orb, we've kept our 2 degree orb there. So what we can do first of all is we can put these in a bracket. If I hold the control key down, I can select both lines and I can put them in a bracket. And then I don't want Mars, Pluto and Mars, Saturn. I'm happy with Mars, Pluto or Mars, Saturn. So here in the bracket, I'm happy with a Mars, Pluto aspect or a Mars, Saturn aspect. Now, the importance of the bracket is that with Boolean operators, brackets, whatever's inside the bracket, will always be dealt with first. And once it's established that, then it looks up to this group here. So here, Jigsaw is going to scan the entire 100 years of the 21st century and look for every time that Mars makes an aspect to Pluto by the 4th harmonic, or Mars makes an aspect to Saturn. And once it's established that subgroup, then it's going to go through that subgroup and find out within that subgroup when Saturn makes an aspect to Pluto by the fourth harmonic. That's our search. Now, as I said to you in the filter data records part of this tutorial, this can be confusing. You need to sort of get your head around it. And it's a matter of playing with small data sets and doing really simple Boolean searches. But if you can understand Boolean searches or know how to build them, then you will expand your ability to work in astrology fantastically. So let's do this search. Let's just do it. If we click search, it's going to now, it's scanning through the 100 years of the ephemeris, and because I've already used this ephemeris once before, it's already calculated it, and so now it merely has to read the data record. So now it's a lot faster. So once you've calculated a whole lot, then you'll find it's considerably faster. Okay, here we've got 54 times in that 100 years where we have this planetary combination. We can view that if we want to, but we can also filter, just like I showed you on the earlier part of this tutorial. We can filter it, or we can create a new project. Let's create a new project just with that group of charts in it. So if we say it is a Saturn, Pluto, Mars, fourth harmonic. Don't be afraid of long names. 21st century. Don't be afraid of long names for your data sets, because then when you come back to this in a month's time, you actually totally understand what you've got contained there. So use the long name feature of Windows. Okay, let's actually now have a look at it. It's actually, Jigsaw's loaded that up as a data set. Let's actually have a look at it. And here they are. Here we've got 2010. Here it is in 2036. Here it is again 2053 in the August, in 2062, 77, 93, and that's it. Here are the times of this. Now, you could then decide to do something with that. You could now take it into your tabulate and graph screen, and you could look at other combinations that were happening in that time. Sun through to Pluto, in aspecting in any of these aspects, and let's just actually have a look at that in a table. There we are. Let's look at it in a table. So this is actually showing us now. Remember, we've already got the fact that these have to be a Mars-Pluto. Here they all are, right? A Mars-Pluto and a Saturn-Pluto combination. So here they all are as well. Here's your main one, because we know every record has to contain it. But here's a whole lot of other aspecting as well, which you might want to work with or examine in some way. Alright, what I'd like to do now is just actually ask a more complex question of our ephemeris, and just to show you how we can build such a question in the criteria search screen. We've got the ephemeris loaded up. Let's go to the criteria search screen again. And here we have it. The question we're going to ask is this: will there be, or when will there be, any solar eclipses? So that's your first point, a solar eclipse which is actually also at the same time having a Mars-Uranus midpoint aspect to it, or a Mars-Saturn aspect to it, fourth harmonic. So we're actually asking the question, we've got a whole 100 years. We want to look at when in the 21st century will we have any solar eclipses where the transiting Mars-Uranus midpoint is forming a square, a conjunction, or an opposition to the eclipse as it happens, or a Mars-Saturn midpoint, transiting midpoint, doing that. That's a nice complicated question. Let's build it in this screen and show you how to do it, and also show you how to save it for later on. With your ephemeris open up the criteria search screen. First thing we want to ask, or the first thing we have to establish, is we're looking for all the solar eclipses. Now, there's no simple eclipse button on this, but you can build it. The solar eclipse, as you know, is a sun-moon conjunction. So using the control key, select the moon and the sun. We want an aspect, so we go for angular separation, and we want the conjunction. The ephemeris is built with random times through the day, so it's not going to be exactly at the time of the eclipse. But if we give a 12-degree orb, then that's the movement of the moon through the whole day, and at some time in that day, if it forms a conjunction to the sun, that's the beginning of our formula. So 12-degree orb, there we are there, select the conjunction and add it. So we've got the first part of our search is any sun-moon conjunction in that whole 100 years with a 12-degree orb. Going to get a lot of hits every month. But we know it's more than that. To make a solar eclipse, the sun also has to be in a conjunction fairly wide with the node. So if we make the sun a node, we also want a conjunction, but if we look for any eclipse, even partial, we can say an orb of 18 or 19 degrees. If we wanted to construct this for simply total solar eclipses, we would make this about 11 degrees. We're just building an eclipse here. We'll click on the conjunction and now we'll add it. Okay, so now what we've done is we've got the sun-moon conjunction whilst and the sun is actually within orb of the mean node. So we know that this combination will be a solar eclipse. And indeed, if you wanted to, you could save this and we'll call it Eclipse Solar North Search, because all we're doing is we're looking at the eclipses happening around the north node with this search, and we simply save it. Okay, that means that any other time when we come back, we can simply load that up and it will run for us. But now we want to add the criteria that the solar eclipse, as it happens, we want aspecting to be happening around it. And we're going to look at the transiting Uranus-Mars midpoint to see if it actually aspects this solar eclipse. So we go to More Points, because we don't have the midpoints here, so we need to add them in. We go to More Points, we go up here to Midpoints, then we select Mars and Uranus, just holding them down. We get Add Single Midpoint, and we'll put that in. We also want to examine for the Mars-Saturn midpoint, so we'll add that in. So we've got these two midpoints here. This is very simple. We've covered this screen before, so you can add variations on a theme to this depending on your own ideas. We'll click OK, and now we've got these 2 points here. Now what we want to add to our question is we want one of these to be aspecting the eclipse, in other words aspecting the sun. So let's take the Mars-Uranus, holding down the control key, select the sun. We don't mind what aspect it is. Indeed, we're happy with any fourth harmonic aspect, in other words square, conjunction, opposition. So let's select harmonic. Let's select the fourth down here, so we've got them here. The orb is a bit wide. Let's keep it tight. Let's say within 1 degree. Let's keep it real tight. So here we've got the conjunction, the square, the opposition, and the waning square. Let's select all 4 because any of these happening we're good with. So we'll click Add. So now we've put it there, and we're saying we want this eclipse and there has to be this, the Mars-Uranus midpoint aspecting the eclipse. But we also want an option of, or we're happy if it's a Mars-Saturn midpoint. So let's click on the Mars-Saturn, click on the Sun. So now we've got those 2 points highlighted. We've still got our aspects, we've still got our orb, we've still got our fourth harmonic, we've still got that collected. So just click the Add. Alright, we're building our search here, but now let's look at our Boolean operators. Here's the eclipse, and then we want either the Mars-Uranus or the Mars-Saturn midpoint aspect. So the first thing is we need to put an or in here. It's this or that. But also we want to bracket it to make sure, otherwise what we'll get is the sun, moon and the eclipse and this. We'll get that, or we'll get every other time in the whole 100 years where there has been a Mars-Saturn making an aspect to the sun, no matter where the sun is in relationship to the mean node or the moon. Do you understand? It will actually do the eclipse and that, or it'll just do this all by itself, which is not what we want. So we need to bracket this. So highlight these two and simply add a bracket. Now what we're asking Jigsaw is we're asking for every time the sun and the moon are going to come together, when, and at the same time the sun is within a certain orb of the nodal axis, so this is going to be an eclipse. And then, once that's happening, there has to be a transiting Mars-Uranus midpoint forming a fourth harmonic aspect to the sun, or a Mars-Saturn midpoint forming a fourth harmonic aspect to the sun. That's what we're now asking. Let's click the search and see what happens. So it's scanning the 36,500 data records of the ephemeris. It's nearly finished, clocking them through, and there are 11 times in this 21st century where these conditions are fulfilled. And so now what we can do is we can save that. Having worked out that's what we want and we're quite pleased with ourselves, we can click Save, and we can call it something really obvious. We've already got Eclipse Solar Search, but we could call it Eclipse Solar Search Mars-Uranus or something along those lines. Don't, as I said to you before, don't be afraid of or long file names. When you're happy with that, click Save, and then you've got it there. The importance of that is that the next time you go into your criteria search, you can open up and load up your previous searches and then run them again on another slab of ephemeris or another set of data records and so on. Alright, so that's an example of building a more complicated criteria search in Jigsaw. The possibilities of this are almost endless. The key thing, the key approach to this whole criteria search is to think of your question that you want to ask your data. And what I do is I write my question down so I can see it clearly. And I think, okay, if I want that, I've got to break it down into bite-sized pieces that I can then write into Jigsaw. As you write them into Jigsaw and build your search, you can save it so you don't have to go through that thinking one more time. Alright, this completes the research tutorials. They've been quite a lot of them, and hopefully this has inspired you to think about certain things, ask certain questions of astrology and play with it. So enjoy working with Jigsaw, and I hope that you find many interesting things in working with the research module, in working with the family module, and working with the rectification module. All of these things actually intertwine, as I said before, and work together. So good luck with all your projects in Jigsaw. Bye bye.